So today we're going to go over my Seagull S12 Coastline from 2012. We've noticed that the nut and the bridge have turned brown. We're going to take a look at that, go through a setup on it because it hasn't been set up in about 6 months or so. So that's what we're going to do today. Good cleaning and restring. Off to the bench. So the first order of business is going to be to set it up first. We want the string height at the 12th fret. On the bass side, roughly about 2.59 millimeters, and on the treble side, roughly about 1.59 millimeters. At the moment, I just measured it with my measure gauge here, and we're about double what we want to be. So, first thing we're going to do is make a truss rod adjustment, and with that, I will loosen off all the strings, make the adjustment, bring it back up to tune, check the height again. And this may be a long drawn out process. I might have to do this a couple of times. Away we go. First things we do is loosen off all the strings. We're going to do it with the old strings because we're going to be loosening and tightening these strings over and over again. So we don't want to take a chance with brand new strings of bursting one when we're going back and forth. So always do your setup with the old strings. It will make it a lot easier. And one other thing to remember while you're loosening and tightening the strings all the time, remember, loosen the treble side strings first, because we're going to be loosening and tightening and loosening and tightening. We don't want to take the large strings, loosen them, because that will put a lot of extra pressure on the light strings, and there's a good chance you could break one that way. So whenever you're loosening the strings for the setup part, especially when you're wanting to keep these strings back on there again, loosen off the thin treble strings first. So the truss rod adjustment is an Allen key, which is inside the hole and up into the bottom of the neck. You won't be able to see it very well here, but it is right up in there, right dead center. Get the proper sized Allen key. I will not tell you what size it is because it could be different for your guitar, so I'm not going to tell you what size it is and then have somebody ruin theirs. Okay, so what we are going to try and do is we want the action to go down. So what we are going to do is tighten the truss rod. Tightening it is going to pull the head down, and then that will make it a lower action up here. When doing truss rod adjustments, always go very slight. You should only do about 1/8 of a turn and then bring it up to tune and see again how it is going to sit from there. If it seems a little tight, loosen it first just to get a little wiggle go. So you want to do about that much of a tighten and then bring it up to tune again. Okay, so I've now got the bass side to about 1.59 and where we want it. It did take 3 tries to do it. Now, we don't recommend that you try 3 times on there right off the bat. Make 1/8 basically from that angle to this angle, and then bring it up to tune again, check it over, make sure it works. Then if it's still low, go through the hassle of reloosening everything one more and then bring it up to tune. I know with the 12 string it takes a long time, but it's better off doing that than damaging the truss rod. The truss rod is a little metal bar that is buried inside here. There's a nut at either end, and it is bowed so that when you tighten it, the bar straightens and hence pulls the head down to flatten it out. That's if you've got a bow this way in your board. So, as I say, do it in small increments. Okay, now we're on to the next, which is I'm just gonna let it sit for a bit. We're gonna play it a little bit, make sure that the string height stays where it is, and then we'll go on to the next part of removing all the strings and getting into the cleaning. Okay, so we brought it up to tune, we played it a little bit, and we're still pretty high in the action. So we're going to do it again. Just like I told you earlier, if you're going to do it properly, do it over and over if that's what comes up, if that's what you need to do. It is well worth the time to set it up properly. Whoopsie, that went a little far. Didn't need to go that far. Because you want to make sure that this is right. So if you have to do this 3 and 4 times, then do it 3 or 4 times. It's going to take a while, but in the end it will be worth it. So there we go. As I say, I've already made 3 adjustments and I'm going to have to make another one. So away we go. Back in a bit. Okay, so it took 6 adjustments to get this thing to the point where the bass is where it should be. The treble is still high. So what I think we're going to end up doing is maybe sanding off a bit of the lower side of the bridge, just to kind of bring that down a bit and make this a little better play. Other than that, I'm fairly happy with it. I don't get up way too high in the playing of this anyways, so it probably won't matter much, but I would like it to be at least consistent across. And that's what we're going to do. So, as I say, I did 6 adjustments, 6 truss rod adjustments to get this done. Now, I haven't adjusted the truss rod probably in about a year or so. It is the middle of August right now, so it's very warm and humid everywhere. That is probably why it is out of adjustment the way it is. Now, when you're tightening up the strings, bring up to tune, then grab them and give a tug back and forth, and then tune them again every time you loosen them and tighten them up again, just to make sure that they're all in the proper spot. So once again, here we go at the 12th fret. It's about 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 millimeters, which is acceptable. On this side, on the treble side, 12th fret, we're still about 2 1/4. We want it to be about 1 1/2. So there's a fairly good amount of material that I'm going to take off of this here part of the bridge, and we'll get to sanding in that part later in the video. But right now, it is time to remove the strings and get them set up. We're going to remove the strings. I'll do the adjustment at that point here because I don't want to do the truss rod anymore, so I don't have to retighten and that a bunch of times. If it stays at this height on the treble side, then that's what happens. I won't be worried too much about that. So it is now time to remove the strings and get ready for the cleanup. Remembering, always loosen the skinniest strings first so that you don't break them. So now I've taken the strings off of the head here. If you get yourself one of these winders, which will make it a lot easier to there's usually a little groove in the bottom right in here that you can put under your pins to remove the pins easier. Because it's plastic, it won't mark your bridge, or shouldn't. Those are tight, but I'm going to take them off anyways. Okay. Some people say keep all your pins in order and know where they were, where they came from, so that you can keep them in the same spot. That Seems like a lot of work to me. I don't know. Google it, see what you come up with. I just use the pins like I use the pins. Okay. And I'll get into the proper disposal of strings here in a second. Okay, so now I've removed all the strings. I've got 12 of them here. Keep them in one bundle. Do a wrap. Pull them down to the squeezy end. Wrap in through the bottom or through the top. Do it a couple times around here. Try and keep all your tails in one spot. Now, these are a dangerous, dangerous thing. So what you want to do is dispose of these properly. Number one, go through the hassle of taking the complete strings off. I see people cutting them here. You're just making more waste, like more parts. So go through the hassle, put it all together in one. Now, you will find that most guitar stores will take these back and they can be recycled. They can be melted down and used again. Please do that. Don't throw them in the landfill because, well, it's fairly self-explanatory. I made a question on Facebook not long ago about that to see what people did, and it started a big firestorm. There was so many people that just threw them away. Doesn't make sense. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is the nut and the bridge have taken on quite the brown. You can see the difference there. I believe that was just from the sunshine. As I say, I've got another set of these for spare, but I want to use these until they're just not usable anymore. So I'm going to give them a bleach bath, and we're going to see if that's going to work or not. I wouldn't recommend it until such time as we make sure it's going to work. Other thing is, when you take this out, remember the short part that is off is for the skinny strings. Okay? You put them in that way, your intonation's going to be out. You'll notice that right near the end, one end is slightly offset for the last two strings. Those are your thinnest strings. Okay? Keep that in mind. Okay, let's get clean up here and get to the point of putting these in the bleach bath to see if they are going to work. They're made of tusk. I honestly don't know if that's an issue or not. The nut was loose. There's a little tab of glue right in here and on the back of that. I believe just to hold it in place while you're stringing it. There's a lot of pressure on that, so this has been loose for a while, but I just put it on there and strung it up. As you noticed when I said at the beginning of the video that it was slightly out, was maybe I wasn't watching as close when I tightened them up. I don't know, but we will we'll look at that when we get to the point of restringing. Now let's put this in our bleach bath and see how they handle it. Keep clean up area, pins all in one spot, winder here. This will be going into the package that I get the new strings out of so that I can take them back to the axe shop and recycle them. Okay, 1, 2, 3, here we go. And one other thing to know is when you put the bleach in the pan, don't put the pan in front of the fan that's blowing all over the room. Okay, it's in there. We're going to let it sit for a bit. Keep an eye on it because we don't want bad things to happen. Sitting in the bleach. All right, next thing is going to be to clean this guitar. It is a mess, and for that we're going to get out all our cleaners and we'll look at that shortly. And I also took my phone, put it down in the hole, looked around inside. You always want to do that, make sure that any of your braces are still attached, or you know, nothing silly in there like a mouse nest or anything like that. Okay, the one new cleaner I am going to use here though is to hydrate the fretboard. I've taken a cleaner and went over it. Might even go over it a bit more. It's hard to tell with these fretboards because of the grain going this way and the dark grain and the light grain. It sometimes looks like some of the darker stuff is the oils and grease off your fingers getting embedded right into the fretboard. So be aware of that. You know, that's just something that you want to get that stuff cleaned out if at all possible. As a matter of fact, I might even go over this one more time here. I've come back to the cloth that I was using the spray cleaner with. I personally use Diageo. That's because that's what is at my store. Not my store, the axe shop that I go to. Okay, you want to make sure you get right down into the grain and try and get any last little bit of your DNA, grease, grime, and crap, dirt out of the fretboard. I'm not going to polish the frets this time because I've done that last time. And I mainly have to worry about cleaning just the bottom few frets because I never play up in here. It never really gets any dirtier than what it is. So as I say, cleaning is just cleaning. It's nothing drastically different about that. I'm going to use a Diageo Hydrate for a fretboard. Some people use lemon oil, whatever it is you use. Go to the guitar shop and get that stuff. Don't get Lemon Pledge because the cleaners in that will mess with things. It'll like lift the glue and that sort of thing. You just plainly don't do that. Shake vigorously. 1 dab per fret. Use little dabs up that end. I'm going to start at this end. Just make sure you get a good coverage the first time, because you want this to lay on there for a bit and seep into the wood grain. So make sure that you get good coverage. Wipe the excess off there. Okay, we're going to let it sit for a minute or two, let that seep into the fretboard. Okay, so now we're back. I've done a good cleaning of the guitar. I'm not going to go through all that because you don't need to see me go through cleaning a guitar. I did use 2 different compounds. I used a cleaner and then I also used a detailer. What you want to do is use a fresh clean rag for every different compound you use or cleaner that you use. All I use is cut up pieces of t-shirt material. Make sure to cut off any of the seams, hems and that, because the thread that they use to tie the hems and seams together are made of nylon, so you don't want to scratching that, you know, because they use the nylon because of course it has to be very strong to hold the seams and hems together. You don't want to take a chance that that's going to scratch anything. So nice soft material. I've already done the cleaning and the detailing. Now that the fretboard is all set and ready to go, we're going to get into the nut and saddle. We've done the nut and the saddle in bleach. It didn't work. It might have come up a little bit. I let it soak in the bleach for about a half an hour and then I went at it with one of those green scratchy pads. It might have lightened it a little bit, but not enough to make any difference. So as I say, it didn't ruin them. So I'm going to reuse these ones and save my new ones for later. That said, when we came to the saddle, remember, short side goes to the skinny strings. This is left-handed guitar, by the way, so that's why it's not reversed. Anyways, we had a little high action with the skinny strings. The thicker strings are in a good spot. So what we're going to do is get a flat surface and sand off a little bit at this end, and then slowly work our way down and make sure that we keep it a flat surface. And hopefully we can drop this just a hair. What you can do is take a pen or a marker and mark how much you want to take off, and then once you're sanding past the mark that you put on there, then you know you've gone down enough. It's a little tricky, going to use math, blah blah blah. Either way, we're going to do that now. So let's reset the camera to another angle and get the sanding block ready for that. Let's make ourselves a new bench. But before we do that, there's also a couple other adjustments you can do on this. Up here, there are nuts around each of these spindles. Make sure they are all tight. I did. If you notice that when tuning, some of the paddles are stiffer than others, there is a little Phillips screw in the very end, probably too close to see that, in the very end of the paddle. You can adjust the tension of the twisting. This one's fairly light, this one's a little tougher, but Phillips screwdriver right in the end, and you can adjust that. There's a little, you'll notice a little nylon washer in between the paddle and the spout that comes out. That's what it is. It just tightens and loosens on that there nylon ring to create tension or lessen tension. That is something that you can do. Don't over tighten them. Obviously don't over loosen them. Find the sweet spot and have them set that way. All right, now on to our sanding. So now you want to be fairly careful with this. You don't want to take way too much off. So what I'm just doing is I'm get my thumb and finger overlap so that when I put it here, this end is not touching, but this end is. I'm just going to start sanding back and forth. It's probably going to suck for the sound, but I'm just trying to take off a little bit of this. And as we go forward, we're going to want to take a little more off every spot. So we can check, make sure there's a little bit of a rock to it there. So want to take a little more off down this way. And I've already made it uneven. So what we will do is let the end hang off. There are obviously much better ways to do this than what I'm doing it, but basically what we want to do is take a little sliver off of this whole side with a bit more at that end. So I'm just doing like the last quarter of an area. We took off a bit of the end. Now we're doing the next area here, and then we're going to take a bit off of there, and then at that point we're going to start probably trying to do the whole thing flat, because we want the bridge to sit as flat as possible. Now there is a lot of string tension on them, on that, so it won't be, it's not going to rock while you're playing. It's not going to rock while you rock. But it's all in where the pressure that you're putting on the paper. So now I'm going to do the whole thing, but I'm putting the main pressure this end. I want to keep the flat on there, but pressure on this end because I'm trying to take a little more off this end than the other end. I have like, I don't know what this is. It's got to be like 100 or 80. It's fairly coarse sandpaper. Once I get so far, what I will do is not sand this end, leave it off of the sandpaper. And I'm, by just feel of my fingers, trying to get this part the main portion. And now, just by looking at it, I can see I have to start back here a bit more. So I'm going to do it pretty much down the middle, leaving that side off of the sandpaper. And I have a nice marble. Okay, so I have to flatten it out in the middle more. You want to keep this here as flat as possible. So what happens is if I somehow take too much off down here, I want to flatten that out, and then I can raise the truss rod adjustment to make it more acceptable. You have to do truss rod adjustments about every 6 months or so because of the difference in weather. Obviously, depending on where you are. I'm in southern Canada, but it is like stinking hot here in the middle of the summer, and it is freezing cold in the middle of the winter. So there's a fairly good difference in atmosphere. I certainly hope the sound isn't like driving you guys nuts. Now I've taken a little bit off. I can tell by feel that the one side is deeper than this side. So now I want to put it on a slight angle. And there's no rocking to it. I can see I still have to, just by looking at it, you can tell I still have to do a bit about the middle. Now you're going to want to be careful with doing this. I'm not being way too careful just for the simple fact that I have another set that I can do this with. Okay, so now I've got it to the point where I can tell the low spot is pretty much around the middle. I'm going to do just the middle by sanding on the corner of the paper, because I don't want to take anything off down here. Take 10-15 strokes, take a look at it, see what you feel. Clean the surface, clean this. There is no rocking in it. It looks fairly level, but I still have a lot to take off at this end. So this marble top is going to be really handy for this because it does keep everything flat. Okay, so I can feel a little bit of high spot right about there. Okay, now front to back. Seems fairly flat. I think we're going to probably do that. Now I use very, very light strings, and it's a 12 string. So having a little bit high action down here isn't going to bother me that much. But every time I restring, I can do a little bit more, dial it in a bit more until I get it where I want it. And there we are. So now we will switch to restringing. As well, if you find that the high action is up near the nut, you can sand that down as well. That will help as well. I haven't noticed that much of an issue, so I'm going to leave this the way it is. I don't know if this one, well, this one has obviously been arranged, was set up at the time of manufacture of the guitar back in 2012, because that's what this is. That's the original, as is this. But I think we're going to leave it at that point and restring the son of a gun, see how it sounds right after these messages. Last time I did this, I did it with the strings on, so I was not able to get in between all the pegs. Okay. Now remember, the two skinny strings are the ones that are offset to the rest of them. There we go. And nut down here. That's going to fall off, so we'll worry about that once we get the first set of strings in. Now when you get your strings, there's obviously, for the bottom four, there are two different gauge strings. You do the skinny one first, and then the thick one. When you are putting it in the hole, there is a little round spool on the end of that. And there are pins all over the floor. Like I was saying, there's a little round spool on the end of the string. What you want to do is have it so that it rolls down into the hole. Now the skinny string first and then the thick, you will be able to tell that by your nut. It will tell you that. Just by looking at it, you'll be able to tell which string goes first. All right, so first string is in the top. You want to put it this way so that the circular part is this way. Push down on the pin. Once you get down so far and the spool gets inside the guitar, it will start to slide up the pin. The string's holding still, but the pin's going down. That's what you want. If you push down on that pin and the string goes with it, then what's happened is you have the roller what's happened is you've got the roller at the bottom of that pin, and once you start tuning it up, it's going to pop off there and bing, and you're going to have an ugly time with the other end. So make sure that the pin goes down but the string stays up. When you're coming up past here, you want the nut on there. Obviously we'll put it on there. Rule of thumb, when you have a 12 string or an electric guitar where all the pins are on the same side, you want to take this tail 2 spindles past where it's going on. It's going on this one, so you want to go up past that one, past this one, and that's where you want to cut it. So you want about this much wire to wrap around this here. Obviously if you have a 6 string, then you've only got 3 on each side under most circumstances on acoustics, and at that point you just want to make sure that you measure it to 2 and a bit. All right, 1, 2 and a bit, cut here, hold both sides so that this thing doesn't go flying anywhere, because you want to be able to keep that and put it with your garbage strings later to go for recycle. Okay, nuts on. Stick this through so you have just a hair of the, you want to be able to, when this winds around, when the string winds around, you want this to be able to stick out just far enough so that the winding goes under that pin. So we go there, make sure you wind it the proper way, not too much tail, and hold it tight so that you can bend that tight against the spindle. And then the string goes under that tail that sticks out. Wind it, make sure that the string always goes down towards the head of the guitar. We're getting about 2 or 3 windings around there. I'm going to set the nut in here. I'm not going to bother gluing it because I'm just going to, you can, if you're anal that way, you can put just a dab of glue on there. All you really want to do is just hold it tight while you're stringing, because once you get in there, the pressure of the string will hold it in place. I'm just doing it to hold it in place. Going to get the next string, which is the fatter of the 2 strings, because they come in pairs. Another pin goes in the bottom hole on the same side. Spool this way so that the hole goes through and it rolls down into the hole. There is a groove in the nut and the pin. It goes so that that wire sticks through there. Okay. Pin goes down so far, and now the pin starts going and the string sits still. That's what you want. Okay. Now you're going on this spindle, so you want to go up 2 past it. Let's get this stuff out of the way. So you're wanting to go on this spindle, up beyond the second spindle past, and cut it here. Double check before you cut it to make sure you've done it right. Hold both sides. And there we go. Now, you'll also find that if you align all your paddles this way, you will have room for this thing to spin around. Alright, let's stick out a little wee bit. Make sure that you turn the string so that the winding comes to the inside of the row of strings, and that your string rolls down the spindle. Okay, we're just putting them on enough so that they hold, because we want to be able to adjust the nut after we get it on. We want to be able to make sure that it's perfectly centered when we tighten down the strings, so that everything is aligned perfectly. You'll notice down here at this end that the string at the back, the pin at the back, the string comes up and rests against the pin at the front. That is to give the proper spacing between. These here 2 strings are half of a pin apart from each other. The same thing with these 2. That goes in, then the second string will run around the side of this pin. We'll run around the side of the pin so that it keeps the spacing proper. Okay. Okay, after the brass are red. If you have any doubt, the next one is black, then green, then purple, then silver. You can line them up there, but you can also, if you compare them, they're pretty easy to tell which ones are which. Okay, hold this away from you while you're unraveling the strings so that the tails don't poke your eye out. Okay, and with each pair, skinny one goes on first. So now when you're getting to the last two pair, they are the same gauge cable because they also get tuned to the same note. So you won't have to look for the skinny one. Don't spend all time doing that because they are the same gauge and the same note when you're tuning. Just a little something you'd want to know. That's one of those 12-string things. Okay, so we're homing on the end of it now. We've got all the strings on. They're not completely tuned or anything. They're just on there and holding on. So what we're going to do first off is make sure that all these pins are sunk. I just take a little rubber handle. Just make sure that don't push right through the guitar. Just make sure that they're all seated well. Okay. Now double check the gap on all of them. Make sure that they're fairly good. They will adjust once you put it in tune anyways. Don't forget, count 12 tails that you clipped off of there, because these things are crap and you don't want these laying around anywhere because they will stick in you badly. Alrighty, make sure that they go with the recycled strings. Okay, now we're going to bring it up to tune. This might take a little while, so woo 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 woo. Okay, so now to tune it. I told you before I tune this into a drop D because of it being a 12 string. There's extra pressure on the bridge, so you want to lessen that at all. If you want to just put it down to D, you can always use a capo if you're playing with anybody else. Alright, so either way, you want your fat string in tune. Play the harmonic on that fat string, which is the second from the bottom, and that's the D that you want your skinny string to hit. Next one up, hit the fat string, which is third from the bottom. Oops. Which is a G for me. So that's the fourth string up. Then you hit the harmonic, and that's the one which you want the third or the skinny string in the second set. And it's a little high. Of course, it's going to take a little while for these strings to get stretched out to the right size. So in the second set, you want the fat string in tune, and then the harmonic at the 12th. And that's where you want the skinny string in that pair. Now the next one up, fat string, is perfect. Hit the harmonic, and that's where the skinny string sits. Fat string, fat string, good. Harmonic on the 12th, and that's where your skinny string is to be. Okay, now we're going up into the tupper. fat string, which is an F for me, which was a little high. So right now we're going to take all 6 strings in pairs and give them a little tweak. And start again at the bottom. Fat string. Get it to whatever note you're having. Harmonic at the 12th is the low skinny string. Next pair, fat string, harmonic is the skinny string. Third pair, fat string, it's a little flat, harmonic at the 12th, and that's where your skinny string is. These two need to be adjusted a bit more, so I will lean on them. Fat string is good. Harmonic is where the skinny string is. Okay, and the top half. Fat string. It's a little sharp. Bend it. I did loosen it a bit too. Then your harmonic. And that's where the skinny string is. Now that is going to be the issue you're going to have on the third from the top, from the skinny, or fourth from the bottom. That is the highest note your harmonic string is going to have to hit. If you're going to break a string, that's going to be the one you break. Okay, now with the upper 2 sets, they are at the same note. So on mine, they're in A. Let's grab them and reef them a bit. Make sure that they're those two are the same, and then the top 2 are the same. So I'm going to bend these all a bit more. You're going to play it for about 5 minutes and it's going to be out of tune, so you're going to have to do this for the next day or so. Okay, now let's see what she sounds like. Something ain't right. Something just ain't right there. So bend all your strings again. One of them is out. One of them is out big time. But that is going to happen for the first little while until you get it into tune. Please excuse my voice, that's a little under the weather. Okay, so it took a little while for me to figure out that the battery on my tuner was low. But now it's all in tune. That's all I need to know. And now the strings are going to bend for a little bit and back and forth before they come into tune and stay into tune. It might take a couple of days. Just grab a hold of them, give them a little tug every time you pick it up, and that's pretty much it. The action did come down a fair bit. Let me just check it and see where it is. I got to get my gauge. So you'll put it up top here in the base, 2.38 millimeters and 1.59 at the bottom. Here we got the wrong side. Close enough for me. And 2.38, which is roughly where it was. 12th fret. Still a little high on the treble, but I'm okay with it. So that's all you really needed to know.